Hello, and in this episode of Discovery of an Author, we sit down with an incredible individual, Neil De Silva. Let me read a little bit about Neil. So, Neil is an author of over 12 books, including the bestsellers such as Yakshini, Haunted, Real Life Encounters with Ghosts and Spirits, and many more books. He has recently come out with a series of horror books for children published by Penguin. Neil is also named as one of the top 7 Indian horror writers to be read by UK's Desi Blitz magazine and has featured in several leading publications and is a prominent speaker at literature festivals across the country. This was an episode or a topic which I usually do not touch or I usually do not venture into because it was about the paranormal. This episode was very special because in this episode not only did we speak about the paranormal, about the horror, about the paranormal ecosystem that exists in the biblical environment or the Indian environment, but we try to figure out the actual scientific and the psychological reason behind these experiences. See, our aim is not to scare people or not to tell information which is not true or correct, but to go deep into the actual logic and reason of things, and that is exactly what we have tried with this episode with Neil. I'm sure you guys are going to love this episode. Watch this episode till the end to really understand the origin of ghosts and spirits and the reality of all the paranormal experiences. And guys, please, if you're liking the kind of content that we are generating, the authors that we are bringing, the conversations around the books and the subjects that we are having, then I humbly request you to please subscribe to our channel. This is the only way in which we can grow. Enjoy this episode. So, Neil, first of all, welcome to Discovery of an Author podcast. It is truly an honor to have you. Huge fan, and I love the fact that you write and you run. And I have a question around that as well, which we're going to go into detail. So, welcome. Thank you for taking your time for us.
Thank you so much, Bhangarh, for taking your time on a Saturday morning to talk to me. And I'm looking forward to chatting horror and the running question that's coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Neil, so I'll get to the question straight away.
Okay.
I first want to understand what is paranormal. We can start with the definition, paranormal, horror, or whatever you want to call it. And once you have explained to us the paranormal, then I want you to explain the realm of paranormal from the biblical perspective. And then you can go into the processes, the names, the characters from Bible. Because my introduction to the paranormal world has been from the Hollywood movies, from the biblical texts, from the biblical stories. I think Satan is as popular as Christ. He is.
Yeah.
And and I have another question which will come to this thing. I have seen a lot of Hollywood series in which they show Satan in shades of gray. It's like, it's not like it's equivalent to some people worshipping Ravan. Getting what I'm saying? There are parallels.
I understand their analogies.
You're not painting them completely as demonic.
Let's take this a bit at a time.
Yeah.
So you asked me like what is
paranormal?
Paranormal. So paranormal, in my opinion, like there are tons of definitions of this term as well. But if you break down the word, it is para and normal. So what I believe is the paranormal world is that world which we do not see it in our normal existence, in our day-to-day life. But it exists. It exists probably in a realm that we don't know about. And there we haven't reached yet. And that is why we do not call it abnormal. We do not say that it is not there. We believe, at least the people who believe in horror like I do, we believe that the paranormal world is out there. There are ghosts, there are spirits, there are specters. There is this kind of an aura that we were just talking about before starting the recording. So all these things do exist. They do influence us. They affect our day-to-day lives, but in ways that we can't see them, we can't perceive them, and we cannot even understand the true extent of how ingrained they are in our day-to-day life. So that is what I believe paranormal is. If you go, for example, to somebody's house, right, for the first time, the moment you step in the house, you get an idea of whether you are welcome in that house or not. You get an idea whether you are going to be comfortable here. You take up a job. For instance, your gut instinct tells you that, okay, I'll take up this project, I'll sign up for it, right? All the other factors notwithstanding, you sign up for it because your gut instinct tells you that, okay, this might work for me. This office space is nice for me, or I want to go to this travel location because it's a place where I'd like to go. Now, this is also always because some kind of energy is pulling you. This also happens with people. You meet a stranger, like you and I are meeting for the first time, but then there is sometimes an instant connect with somebody. You feel that, okay, this could be something that might go on beyond a single meeting, right? And sometimes you feel like, I'm not going to talk to this person. We are not adjusting. So these are vibes. The Gen X calls it, Gen Z, sorry, calls it vibes. But we call them as a kind of an aura, an energy, which we all radiate. Now, this is something that cannot be seen, it can only be experienced, it can also not be explained, and this becomes part of our paranormal ecosystem. When we depart, our bodily existence will move on. Like we will not be there anymore in the form that you are seeing me or I'm seeing you, but we believe that these energies will stay. And that is a part of the entire system that forms the paranormal world, which we are trying to explore. We are trying to understand. Now, in this, there are good energies as well as bad energies. There are gray energies, to put them mildly. So, all these things together, they form a system which we are trying to explore in the horror world. You asked me about biblical horror. Right. So that is now something that, of course, we all started. Now, Indian horror has taken a foothold now in
Yes.
in books. I can say, like, when I was starting to write horror, I wrote my first book in 2015, Maya's New Husband. When I wrote that, there was no purely Indian horror novel in India, except for the Song of Kali, maybe, and a few other books. But I don't think that's completely an Indian book. So, a true Indian horror book for the first time, that was Maya's New Husband. A lot of bloggers had covered it for that reason. And I had no precedent. I had nothing to look up to as to what Indian horror really is, because all the horror that was there was Stephen King, was the Conjuring, and Conjuring also came a little later, but
Shining and all this.
Shining, Exorcist, Omen, all these kinds of movies which we grew up on. Now the thing is, in the Bible, there is a clear dichotomy between, you can say, Christ and the Antichrist. Right? So the Antichrist, or you call him Lucifer, or whatever name you give him, or grows up to be Satan in a later evolution of it.
That is
So
Islamic influence. I think Shaitan becomes Satan. ऐसा
yes,
कुछ?
there is it's the same word which we keep on changing, and we use the same terms. In fact, we'll come to that also. You have also given the analogy of how Ravan is also worshipped in some places, like how Lucifer is worshipped by the Satanists. But it's not so simple to compare these things, because there's a belief system as well. And the belief system of these places where the horror thrives, it colors a lot of it. Like, for example, if you look at it from a pure Christian perspective, then Lucifer is completely considered to be evil, and the people who worship Lucifer are also evil. So they are the devil worshippers, they are the demonic people, they are the Satanists. They will not come out into the open, and they will not, like, proclaim to the world that we are evil. But we do hear of incidents sometimes, such as the mass suicides that occurred in a Satanist church a few years back, which was mentioned, the Amityville horror, where the person actually went out and said that the devil made him do it. So these incidents do come up, but we totally, completely believe that this comes from an evil entity. So there is, in at least the Western horror that we see, though it also stems from a religion in a way, but there is a clear demarcation of what is good and what is evil. And the evil side is horror, the good side is God. That is it. Indian horror is more complex. I'm talking about pure Indian folklore and mythological horror. Because again, there is a differentiation between what is the folklore horror and what is the paranormal horror, which I'll come to it. But the folklore horror that India derives from is mostly about these creatures and entities. So that is more in the supernatural area than the paranormal. So I have covered some of them in my books. Like, I have the Pishach, I have Yakshini, and I speak about Betals, I speak about Dians, Chudels. Let us take Yakshini as an example, as a prototype of what I'm trying to explain. Now, Yakshini is considered to be a demigoddess. So she has neither a completely godly existence, nor a completely human existence. She is somewhere in between. And this also applies to some of the other demigod entities, such as, I should say, the Gandharvas. So Yakshinis and Gandharvas are considered to be consorts of each other. So Yakshinis, what they do in our Hindu mythology, there are 36 of them. And every Yakshini is bestowed with a boon granting capacity. So a Yakshini can give you a child, a male child if you wish. Another could give you wealth, another could give you fame, another could probably defeat your enemy or something like that. So every Yakshini has a power. And we humans, we worship the Yakshinis through an elaborate process, which is called as the Yakshini sadhana. So here is the godly side of Yakshinis. I should also give you some context. Yakshinis don't stay on either earth or on Swarga. Prithvi or Swarg ke beech mein, there is this one realm called as Alkapuri, which is governed by Kuber, the god of wealth. And Kuber is the king of all the Yakshinis as well. So the Yakshinis, when a human being does a Yakshini sadhana, to propitiate a particular Yakshini. If that Yakshini is happy with how the ritual is performed, which is very difficult to do, then the Yakshini would come to earth and the Yakshini would grant that person the boon that he is seeking. But if even a single thing goes wrong in that ritual, then the Yakshini will, instead of giving the boon, give a curse to that man and so Yakshinis are considered to be very temperamental. So they are not always good. They can even grant a curse, which would, completely ruin your life. Instead of what you are asking, they could give you the exact opposite of it. So it is not like they are gods entirely. They are not gods at all. That's why we place them in this realm as demigods. Now, how do you see this from a Western horror lens? You cannot, because in Western horror, or you can say in the whole culture, the pantheon of Western folklore, there is no creature that has this kind of a temperament or a dichotomy, which you would say like, could be good or could be bad. But here we do have many such creatures that do that. Even gods give curses sometimes in our mythology, but that does not happen out there. So this is how it is clearly distinct. Writing horror from an Indian lens is both challenging as well as fun, because we do not talk only about the ghost. Now, if you watch any of the horror movies that you spoke about, it's more about the scare, it's more about the fear. But in an Indian horror context, it is more about the drama, it is more about the association of the human being with the entity. It's more about that. Some of the classic horror movies that were made in recent times, like Tumbad, it is not just about Hastar, but it is about how that man is changing, himself transforming because of Hastar. In fact, if you actually watch the movie again, you will see the scenes of Hastar are just about 3 or 4 in the entire movie. There are no jump scares. The entire horror is coming from how the man is getting depraved because of greed, and that is what our horror is. We are much richer in the context of horror, but we have not even scratched the surface yet. So that's my leading response to this, and we can move on. I'm sure a lot of other stuff will come, but yeah, this is it.
So, Neil, I still want to understand one more thing. So, two things. I will take parallels, one from the biblical belt and again from the Indic belt. And I want to still understand one thing. Now, you said in the biblical side, you have the Christ and the Antichrist. Christ obviously is Jesus Christ. A lot of literature, a lot of books, a lot of practices, the entire religion, Christianity is around that individual.
Yes.
Because he was born as a human being on this planet. People interacted. He gave his sermons and everything. That is why literature exists. He's an historical figure. Now, is Antichrist, which we are calling Lucifer or Satan, what I never understand, and I'm, let's say, also talking about the Indian anti-divine forces as well. Let's say you're talking about Yakshini. Let's say you're talking about Gandharvas and Pishachinis, everything, right? So when the divine, the positive part, you have rituals, you have sadhanas for Christianity, for India, you have everything, because those individuals existed. They interacted with people. We know who they are. There were a lot of people who were their devotees and disciples. They were able to create ecosystems around that, that we have, that we can follow to connect with that. If you are calling that a higher consciousness, I can connect with that positive higher consciousness. When we talk about Lucifer, when we talk about Satan, which is the Antichrist, how did the processes and the ecosystem around those entities got created?
Because Lucifer is in the Bible. There is a
Acha, and there is an individual. So there was somebody in flesh and blood.
Yes. So, though Lucifer is not mentioned in the way that, of course, there was very subtle hints and clues, and some of the biblical verses even directly refer to an antichrist. There is a Satan. All these things are definitely there in the Bible, and from there, these things have been collected and gathered and built up over the ages to create the modern image of Lucifer. Of course, Lucifer is not as detailed as Christ is. Now, the difference is that Christ was the Son of God. That is what the Christians believe. And Lucifer is a fallen angel. So he was an angel to start with,
Like Gabriel.
like Gabriel. He was an angel to start with, but then he lost favor with God and then he was expelled from heaven. And since that time, Lucifer has become a kind of an antichrist figure. Now, Satan is a complete antichrist. Now, in some places, Satan and Lucifer are equated to be one. In some places, there is still a difference that Lucifer is a fallen angel who has gone rogue, right? And Satan is just everything that is opposite to Christ. But both of these things are there in the Bible. In fact, there's a verse that also indicates the number 666 as the number of the devil. So, that verse exists in the Bible. It comes from there. So that is how these things have grown over the ages.
And there are people right now who completely belong to the Antichrist cult
There
as
are.
well. They follow, but they are not coming in the
They
forefront.
will never come out in the open, and we will never know who they are unless and until, like something happens that shocks us. But even after something happens, there will be lots of theories and conspiracies that will probably be under wraps. We'll never know the full extent of truth. Isn't it the same thing with our horror also?
Absolutely.
We can't ever say, because there were people who totally believe that, for example, Betals exist.
Yeah.
Our people who say, and in fact, if you go to our villages in India, people will vouch for the fact that they have seen chudels, which is, and their belief is so strong that even though you do not believe, you may probably, like think about what they are talking about. So that's because these entities probably, I should not use the word probably, maybe they do exist, but they have never come out in the open for us to see in the way that, and if they come out, our lives won't be the same as they are now.
So whenever you do hear these stories, जैसे I have heard a lot of stories growing up, a lot of my Pahadi friends, they always used to have these stories of, when they're in Himachal or Uttarakhand, कि in our villages we see that, in our villages they used to say कि we have seen exorcism, we have seen, और ये तो हमने बचपन से सुना है नील, that उसमें माता आ गई. So
Mata.
now माता आ गई can be divided into two, the positive and the negative.
Correct.
I think now how my mind is working right now. If these negative entities do exist, how is it that they're able to take possession of an human being? And what I have known and seen, once they do take up the position of the human being, a human being is not able to handle. And that is why it goes berserk.
Now, from what I have understood, see, I speak a lot with paranormal experts, and I'm an author, I'm not a paranormal expert, but even then, there's a lot of research involved. So, at the end of the day, you tend to learn a lot of things. So, my collated knowledge tells me one thing, that possessions do happen. That is for sure. And we have actually seen them during times of Navratra and all that you mentioned. And then there is this Jagar, the whole system where, that the dances and all, and people dance in a very bizarre way. We don't know what has overtaken them. And those people also will not know what happened to them in those moments that they were under that kind of spell. Now, this is believed to be a direct example of possession, though we do not have any scientific proof for that yet. But this could be that. And when it is possession, now one thing that I have learned is that this will happen to only two kinds of people. The number one people are those who are vulnerable emotionally. So like they are in a dark spot in their mind, because negative energies will always feed on those. So if you are already afraid, or you are going through something which is giving you an emotional setback in your life, and your mind is not thinking right, this is the time when an evil entity might take you over. So this is one. And number two are those people who have belief in the negative entities. So these are the two people who can welcome, they can actually welcome, and the other one is an unwelcome entity, but they also can get possessed. Like some tantrics, they can actually invite a negative spirit within themselves if they want to. So these are from this. These are my lists. These are my learnings. That these are the two people who will get possessed. They have a higher chance. Now, people like you and I probably will not, because I write horror, so I am dealing with negative energies all the time.
Yes.
Even right now, there are 3 manuscripts open, and I'm talking about a forest deity who has gone rogue, and things like that. So I'm talking about such things. It's pure negative energy that I'm inviting in my room. But I keep my mind very strong, so I am fortifying myself against it. But if suppose something wrong happens, like if I go under depression, for example, I'm just talking out, like, or if I have a kind of a breakup or something like that, that is the time when these people or the negative people will take a house in my mind. So that is what happens usually, which sometimes we also say that this is a mental illness, because again, that is a very close parallel. So this is what I believe happens even during the Jagar, the Jagratas, because that is what these people are intending to do. They actually want to be possessed. They actually want to be the oracle, because there is this whole Greek concept of an oracle where we have seen this very nicely in the movie 300.
Matrix. Even in Matrix as well.
Matrix had it from a sci-fi perspective,
Acha,
but
acha. Oracle with the eyes and everything. I know. Oracle.
if you have,
Goes up to the mountain.
300 again, yeah, because in the Greek mythology, there were actually these women known as oracles who were given a kind of an abode away from civilization, and on the top of a mountain or something like that, because that would be closer to the godly realm, and they could invite God in them. Now, God could be any deity, right? Because the Greek mythology is full of deities. So any god could be invited, invoked by them, and then they could speak the message what the god wanted to give to the humans. But to meet them, you have to climb a cliff and go. So that's the whole concept of oracles, which is what we spoke about just now, even in our Indian system. So that is how it happens. Now, possessions do happen. Some possessions are good, because if a god comes within you, like we also saw this in the movie Kantara,
Yeah.
last 10 minutes. That is amazing climax for any movie worldwide. And that is after all, a deity entering into a human, right? So that's a position, but that's a godly position. That's a divine position. And that is for the betterment of society, or whatever you can, however you put it as. But then there is also a position which is completely negative, like the positions that we watched in the movie Exorcist, or in the Hindi movie Gehrai. There is a movie on YouTube. Watch it. It's a fantastic position movie. Or even in Raat, Revti. So this is also a position from our perspective, but that is purely evil, because there are two types of positions. One is the godly position, and one is the demonic position. And there's also a human position, when a human spirit possesses you. So, in fact, positions also can be divided into 3 spectrums. And being a Christian myself, we believe in exorcism. It's a very difficult rite. It's and everybody does not get a permission to do that. Even the Catholic priests, you have to actually submit a proposal to the Vatican, and from there you have to get an approval to do an exorcism. So it does not happen as simply as it is shown in the Western movies. But once you get a permission to do an exorcism, then there were specific rites depending on who is the possessing entity. So yeah, but that's a very broad subject to cover. But this is basically how it is.
Sorry for the interruption, but our YouTube statistics show that around 65% of all of you who are consistently consuming our episodes are not subscribing to our channel. So this is my request to all of those who do enjoy our content and are finding value in it, to please subscribe to our channel. This is the only way in which we can grow. Thank you, and please continue watching and listening to this episode. Exorcism, even if the Catholic organization gives somebody the permission to perform, what does that mean? That A, they then go and perform with certain sets of practices and rituals.
Right.
It's not something that they created out of their mind. There is something that exists. There exists a process, there exists a literature, there exists tools
Correct.
by which they can tackle something that we are calling paranormal, because we
It's
are not able
almost
to.
like a chemistry lab experiment.
Absolutely.
They have the entire prospectus or whatever it is called as, that book that in front of them, and they just have to do it according to the guidelines
है ना?
mentioned. I mean, the prayers are written, the tools are written, whether it is the holy water or the crucifix or whatever they are supposed to use. All of that is written down. So they just have to, do it, perform
And,
it.
and the mantras, for a lack of better word, that they use are Latin.
Latin.
That
Latin
is Latin. Any specific reason for Latin? It's like West ka Sanskrit. ऐसा?
uh, Latin and Sanskrit, it's always arguable like which language evolved first, but these are two different parts of the world. So the common theory is that both of the languages, they evolved at the same time, and they are the most ancient languages. They are the first language that, not exactly the first, probably you could say, because there were certain other kinds of communication that used to happen between man and man in those days. But then when language started to be formed, when actual words, sentences started to be formed, then it was Latin there and Sanskrit here. So these languages are considered to be the first contact languages of humans with God or demon, whatever you consider.
Acha, the language that they understand. So it is the language that the entities can understand and obey.
Correct.
Otherwise,
And
आप कुछ और बोलोगे वो समझेंगे नहीं.
absolutely. And whatever languages we are speaking now are all derivatives.
Yes.
That's why we fall back on the original language when we are speaking to the forces of this universe.
So basically, exorcism is a process. It happens, and if somebody gets the permission to perform the exorcism, there are high chances of success. And when I say there are high chances of, no, there are not.
There are very remote chances of success. This is what I've heard. But then it also depends on how the exorcism is. Like if the position is very, very strong, then in that case, it's very difficult to, take the entity out. But if it is a mild position, means the demon is not such a powerful entity, then in that case, the exorcism usually works.
So in the Conjuring movie, वो बोलते हैं कि it is based on real events, and these two were the real paranormal investigators.
Yeah,
and as far as I've seen the movie, the demonic entities that took possession were pretty badass. They were like high level grade, and yet eventually they were able to get rid of them. So is it actually based on a true story? Were they actually, these two people existed as paranormal experts who did
Yes,
that?
they are Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they were definite paranormal investigators. You can look them up on Google. They have cracked a lot of cases, including the very famous Amityville case. Even that was
Amityville Horror, that movie that came out.
Yes, the same case that was also they only cracked the case. Then there was also the Annabelle doll case, which is also a part of the whole universe. Then the Conjuring case itself. So all these cases were tackled by Ed and Lorraine Warren, out of which Lorraine was a psychic and Ed was more of the person who did the horror stuff. So here in this situation, the movie is highly exaggerated, number one. So there were a lot of things that actually didn't happen in real life. But the position was there. The house was indeed quite spooky, and they did get rid of the ghost. That's what is on record from their documents. But when they made the movie, they of course blew it up. That always happens.
But Neil, okay, so what I want to ask is that, let's say there comes a time, okay, when we know that somebody is under possession, okay,
Okay.
of some demonic entity, and that individual gets healed not because of any tantric or biblical or exorcist methodologies, but purely by medical science.
Okay.
If that can happen, if medical intervention, if medical science is able to crack somebody who's perceived under possession, do you think this industry or this vertical would be challenged?
It is being challenged even now, don't you think, Raghav? It's happening now also, because the thing is, how far in this modern world do people believe in the paranormal? the belief is shaking. Like a lot of people, they say that the paranormal does not exist.
पर नील वो ignorance से भी आ सकता है ना. That's coming for ignorance.
That could be ignorance also, but there were times where even you start questioning stuff, because if you see a lot of mental illnesses that I speak about, like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, which I also covered in one of my books, Sapna's Bad Connection, right? So these mimic possession. The symptoms, or you can say the way that people behave under the duress of mental illnesses, they look very similar to what they may behave like in times of possession. So obviously there were people who think that, is it really a ghost possessing this person, or is it just some mental illness? And they are very correct to do that. In 90% of the cases, I'll tell you, it is a medical disorder. It has got nothing to do with ghosts or spirits or anything like that. So because I have written two non-fiction books. In fact, I don't know whether you know about it.
Haunted.
Haunted and the Spirits Talk to Me. So these are about real life cases of paranormal experts. I'm writing a book right now. It's coming out this year somewhere, called Tales of a Paranormal Investigator, in which we have debunked a lot of these so-called paranormal investigation stories. So, for example, there was a story of a 19-year-old teenage boy. Like, he used to think that there is a female spirit who comes to me every night, and the boy could not control himself. Like, he feels that,
Sexual urges.
yes, she comes to make love to him every night, and he used to feel molested every morning that he woke up. Not just that, he started feeling weaker and weaker as the weeks passed by, and nobody would believe him in the house. Like, his family would believe that he's just doing stuff when he's alone. So, because the door was locked, nobody could
Yeah.
enter.
Yeah.
This guy, he could not live with himself. He was an academically bright student, but he started faltering with his performance, and he even became suicidal. So when this situation happened, my paranormal expert friend who told me this story, he was brought into the picture. The boy contacted him, not the family, and they understood what was actually going on. Now, I'm not giving spoilers, so I won't say actually what it was, but in a nutshell, I'll say there was nothing paranormal about it. There was something that was definitely happening to him, and it was nothing that he was doing. He was not able to control it also. So, but there was something happening. So, there are such cases in which we think that it might be something demonic or something ghostly, but eventually it turns out to be I would not say mental, but I would just say it turns out to be some kind of a condition.
Or
So,
biological condition. Something
a
related to the
biological
biology of the
condition,
body and
a
the mind.
psychological condition, or something like that. So, I don't want our audience right now to believe that everything odd that is happening is paranormal or ghostly, because
Absolutely.
that would be wrong.
That
It's
would be
not.
absolutely wrong. Yeah.
In 9 out of 10 cases, it is not. I would say even higher than that. I would say in 99 out of 100 cases, it is not. But sometimes there are certain things which our modern science cannot explain. And that is where we start theorizing.
Yeah. But you know why? And first of all, Neil, thank you for saying that. Really, thank you for saying that. That 9 out of 10 cases, it is not paranormal. I think that's very important for people to know and understand. I always tell people, that human problems can and will and should have human solutions.
Absolutely.
Period. ये अगर इंसान से निकली है तो वो इंसान सॉल्व कर सकता है. उसके लिए आपको भगवान के पास जाने की जरूरत नहीं है. In today's day and age, I have read a books of so many spiritual leaders, specifically coming from the Indian ecosystem. They are openly saying that yes, we have had experiences of the so-called gods that you talk about, or devis that you talk about. We have had experiences. We have seen them the way we've seen them in books and images and everything.
Right.
But then they also say कि we believe that these things are nothing but our own higher consciousness.
Yes.
We reached our highest self. We did not see an entity. There was no Vishnu, there was no Brahma, there was no Shiva. It was my own ultimate highest self that I got in touch with. That's something similar.
That is a fabulous description of what God is.
है ना?
That is a fabulous description of it, because people believe, I don't know what, we have a kind of thought that maybe God is a human figure, or God is in an idol, God is in a photograph. But this, what you just said, that God is nothing but our highest point of consciousness.
Highest.
that is the most realistic definition of God. That is what even I believe in. That is what God means for me.
Yeah, I think Jiddu Krishnamurti used to say this thing so many a times, and so many people, and even if somebody does a real study of Vedanta, that is what they'll find. That these are just levels of consciousness. And then they have divided these level of consciousness. Ki there are some lower level of consciousness things. There are lower level of consciousness, but they are not.
And
Yes, there are our own levels of consciousness.
yes. And then there were also the abysmal levels.
The inconscient. The
The
yes.
deepest
Yeah.
depths
Yeah. The
where a human
subconscient.
mind can go to. And that is
Absolutely.
where the demonic energies lie.
Absolutely.
This is the spectrum which
Yeah.
we are in. And we as human beings are somewhere along this spectrum.
Somewhere along the spectrum. Absolutely. So now, Neil, very quickly, and I know that you have explained this thing many a podcast, but very quickly, I want to ask you, how did you? You were born on Halloween, by the way. It's also written on the Penguin website, which I was like, wow, this
I
is
was born
amazing.
at
So
midnight,
just
5 minutes
wanted to,
past midnight. So the exact hour.
wow, yeah, wow. So how did you get interested in this genre? Again, I equate this genre with spirituality. When people do want to enter into a certain subject, they first have experiences or insights. Insights, certain profound insights, which tells them, ki, let's move into the direction. So tell me about your story of venturing into the horror
For
realm.
me, it I don't know, it was an amalgamation of a lot of things because you are right that I have spoken about it in many podcasts, but you can never pinpoint that, okay, this is the point where I started getting interested in horror. Because there were so many things that worked for me at the same time. First thing was that I was born in Mumbai, and in 80s and 90s when I was growing up, Mumbai was very, very silent. It was not like how it is now. And I used to live in Malad. Malad was a suburb. It still is a suburb, and it was quite silent. And people used to be lead very isolated lives, not like now how it is. The places were open, spaces were open, and our parents used to go out to work for like practically the whole day, so we were alone in the house. So that was a kind of an environment that I grew up in. I was a lonely child, quite introverted, and I used to be scared of everything. I had a lot of phobias. I used to be scared of darkness, cockroaches, lizards. If there would be a death in the society, I would not move from that place for days because I would get so disturbed by that. Like I never went to funerals for a very um, I think till the 30s, I never went to any funerals because I was scared of people dying and seeing their corpses. So all these things did work for me. Uh, my dad, he was a big influence on me. He still is. Like my writing all is because of him. He was a big collector of books, and he had no discrimination. Like he used to buy books of all languages, all genres, all subjects, whatever he liked, he would just get. Like we had at a time 5,000 books in the house, and also there was no censorship in my house at all. So I started reading books from his collection, and one day I discovered this trove of horror books that he had. So he had them in the uppermost shelf. So I read Dracula, Frankenstein, Picture of Dorian Gray, all these books, all the classics, before I was in my eighth grade. So I read all of them, and I was very deeply fascinated by the Gothic culture and the Gothic horror of, those manors and castles and vampires and werewolves. So that was my first influence of horror. And even though I was scared of everything else, I was not scared of these books. They scared me, but in a fun way. And somewhere I felt like I want to write these stories also. So that is influence number one. Influence number two, and a much bigger influence, was that my dad was a freelance subtitlist for movies. So he used to translate Hindi movies into English at that time at home on a typewriter. So it's a very gothic environment. You can imagine in our house, it was a very middle class kind of house with a big room, sparse furniture, only a dining table. And on the dining table, my dad would sit with his Remington typewriter by the window, curtains flying, and he would type. And the script of the movie would be next to it. So his clients were all of them, like Yash Chopra and Rakesh Roshan, Subhash Ghai, all those big movies at that time, they were translated in my house. And one of the most prolific clients that he had were the Ramsay brothers. So whenever the Ramsays had a horror movie, the script would eventually land in our house, and we had to translate the movie within 3 days. because the movies were low budget, so it was a grunt job. So when my dad used to translate Veerana, Dak Bangla, Purana Mandir, Teh Khana, I would sit next to him and I would watch how he translated it. And sometimes he would tell me that you just read the Hindi dialogue and I will type faster. So you read the Hindi dialogue, I will type the Hindi dialogue, and then next to it, automatically I will type the English translation. So I used to do this for him when I was in 7th and 8th standard, 12, 13 years old. And sometimes when he would go to work, because he had a job also, he would tell me, you type, you do one reel, you do, or something like that. So I would do that also. So this is where, Raghav, I learned how scripts are, because those were technical scripts. And I learned how to think in different languages, means writing in Hindi and translating it to English for a UAE audience or UK audience. So, that flipping used to happen automatically in my mind at that time. I translated the whole movie Shahenshah when I was in 7th
Oh
standard.
wow, what a movie! What a movie, by the way.
Which is the, I mean, I keep telling about this because it's a thing that I can't believe I did it. It was vacation. Dad had gone to native place and the movie had come. Big Amitabh Bachchan movie. We could not say no. So silently I did it. I ghost wrote it. In fact, nobody knows that I wrote it. It went in my dad's name.
Pun
So
intended. Ghost wrote it.
it ghost wrote it. I intentionally used that word. So this was my second big influence for writing horror. Now, then Doordarshan happened. And Doordarshan at that time had some fabulous horror series. So there was Stone Boy, a series known as Stone Boy. There was
Okay.
a series known as Aghori. There was some series whose names I have completely forgotten. One Marathi series known as Shwetambari, which was all such twisted horror you wouldn't believe. Like this is really horror. Like means Indians could think such horror. We were fairly advanced at that time in the genre. And then there was this one series, anthology series known as Katha Sagar, in which worldwide stories were adapted for the Hindi audience. Fantastic shows. I was hooked. I used to watch horror and consume horror like anything at that time. And then when Z horror show happened,
Yeah.
Ahat happened, right? I was in my 20s at that time. So that was a kind of an influence. But then I had a business of my own. After my post graduation, I started teaching. I opened up a coaching classes and then I had no time at all to either read or to write. The next 20 years of my life, I was teaching chemistry, physics, mathematics, English, everything, because it was my own institute. So, money saving was important. So I was teaching everything. And I did that for 20 years. But when I turned 39, I was 39. At that time, I told my wife that, now everything is set. We have a house, we have our kids. But no, one thing is not working for me, and that is I'm a creative person. I had always wanted to write. And I have these crazy ghost stories in my mind. And if I don't write them, I will never be satisfied. So then I took the call, and she also supported me for that. That let me write a book. So we were in Goa at that time. We were just vacationing. So that night itself, I took out my laptop and I started outlining my story. And the first story that I wrote, 2014, Maya's New Husband, I wrote it in November and I published it on 3rd January 2015. I had no knowledge of the publishing industry at all, but I knew that there was something known as Amazon KDP. So I just went and put it up on Amazon and the story just blew up. People loved it because it was about Aghoris. It was about Maya getting married to a husband that she knows nothing about. The story reached number one on Amazon Horror and it stayed there for 2 years. That's what made me. Then, slowly things happened. Now, this was when I understood that, okay, I cannot just write horror for entertainment. Because, see, till then, till 2015, I was writing horror, but I was writing it because I had fun with the genre.
Hmm.
I looked at it like a kind of an entertaining genre. But after I wrote Maya, I started understanding and analyzing that horror is not just an ordinary genre. I understood one thing very importantly is that fear is an emotion that is one of our basic emotions. Like even the caveman had fear. And it was fear that made the caveman discover and evolve all the things that it did. Even fire, they were afraid of it first. But then we learned to overcome the fear and then use the fire to do things. Right. So that is what even I understood that fear is something that I was also scared as a child. But by writing all these horror stories, I had tamed my fear. And my first book itself was about dying people and mutilated corpses and all of that. So I had In fact, डर के आगे जीत है. That was what I actually did with my first book. And when I overcame that fear, I started writing horror with two perspectives. Number one is to help people overcome their fear of the unknown by reading my books and by reading horror in general. So that is what I even now intend to do. And number two, to try to learn myself and then to spread that knowledge of what horror actually is, of what the unknown actually is. Now, nobody knows that for a fact because the universe is full of secrets. What we know is not even 0.001% of what actually exists out there, right, in the universe. We will never know the full extent of it. We will never even know 1% extent of it. But every day we are learning something. And that is what I wanted to put out in my book so that people could read it and people could be a little less afraid of things that they are, like they don't want to even look at now. So that is what fueled me. And then in 2017, I started connecting with actual people from this world.
Yes, the paranormal expert. I think you also know Jay Alani.
Jay Alani, yeah, he was my first contact with the paranormal world, with whom I wrote Haunted. He's a good friend. And Tales of Paranormal Investigator, which is coming up with HarperCollins now, is his
Acha,
story.
acha, oh, so you are co-authors. You both are co-authors.
We were co-authors on Haunted also, and we are co-authors in Tales also. So this is how it happened. Then I met with Sarbajit Mohanty and Pooja Vijay, and a kind of a liaison started growing where I was talking to paranormal experts and people from the industry, and I was learning from them, and I was like soaking in their knowledge of this world and writing it in my books.
What have
So
you learned, Neil? What have you learned from these paranormal experts?
first and foremost, I've learned that it is not so superficial as we think it is. Horror runs deep and it is truly prevailing everywhere, which we can't see it because of probably our ignorance or our human limitations. But it is there. Now, if I believe in God, not probably in the way that I go to church every Sunday. I don't do that.
But a
But
higher power, a higher entity.
I have a one-on-one communication with God every night. Right? 10 minutes I'll talk to him. That's it. Him, her, whatever it is,
That is
daily.
your version of prayer.
That is my version of prayer. And my prayers are none of the Our Fathers and
Yeah,
Hail Mary
yeah.
that are there.
Very
It's
personal and very
my
intimate.
own kind of communication, right? So this is the way I believe in God. So now I started thinking, if I believe in the positive energy, then there is definitely a negative energy in my life as well. So this negative energy is what I want to tame. I want to not let it, control my life, which was happening in somewhere in my middle age, in my 30s. I'm still quite young. So that was the time when the negative energies were starting to, show their tentacles in my life, and I did not want that to happen. And that is the reason why I wanted to learn more about what are these demons and spirits and the devilic forces. So that is where it all germinated from, and
Would
now I
you
write to understand this.
would
Yeah.
you be okay in just explaining how these negative entities were trying to control you? As in certain, you can give some practical examples, some
Well,
instances wherein how. I mean, I want to know how it was it mental, was it. I want to understand how does it even affect.
I can't really, it's difficult to say that
Yeah.
from somebody's personal experience. But the thing is, see, my life was very good. I mean, I Mumbai, and I had a house, a 3 BHK, two children who were quite healthy, well, intelligent, smart, everything, touch wood. And everything is going very well. A wife and a lot of love in our relationship. So all that is good. But the thing is, I was always a little bit kind of, I wanted to always do something better, like dissatisfied with what I was doing. Like when I was, for example, when I was teaching, I would think that what's the next step? Will I be dying teaching in a classroom? That kind of thoughts. And sometimes I would just think that, okay, what do I do next? So that kind of feeling. So I wanted to do something which would give my creative energies that kind of vent, that expression which I wanted. And I wanted it very badly. When somebody who is not creative will not understand this. But for me, not being able to write my stories, which were like festering in my mind, was a kind of a huge mental block. And this led to depression. And I'm not talking about depression just normally, I'm talking about depression clinically.
Clinically.
So I could not think for days. I did not want to go to the classes for many days. And because of that, physical ailments began. Like You won't believe it, Raghav. I used to have sore throat for months on end. And this sore throat used to be so bad that I used to cough. I used to feel a burning sensation in the throat. I could not talk. I could not speak. So, and the doctors could never diagnose why this is happening. Okay, I should mention, I used to have sleep paralysis and very intense sleep
What is
paralysis.
sleep paralysis? When your body is not, I don't know what is sleep paralysis.
Sleep paralysis is when you are like sleeping, you feel that you have woken up, but your body is not ready to get up. Like, you are still, you feel like you're tethered to the bed, you're tied up to the bed, and you cannot move even your finger. Your mind is telling, I want to sit up now, I want to stand up, but your hand does not move, your legs do not move, even your head does not shake. Let me give you an example. So there was this period, I think I was 20, 28, 29, something like that. I used to go to the coaching classes, and in the afternoons, I used to take a little nap at home during a break. So there was this one cot where I used to lay down in the afternoons. I used to lie down there. So just for a small nap, like 30 minutes, 45 minutes or so. So one afternoon, when I was there on that bed, I was just, my eyes were closed and I don't know when I fell asleep. Then my alarm went off. Just a tiny, small, short alarm it was. And I understood that I have to get up. So my eyes opened, or I felt that my eyes opened. In reality, my eyes were still closed. So my consciousness woke up, right? And I could see that my dad is here, right? And I have to sit up. I'm on the bed. I have to sit up, but I could not. I could not. I could not move my hands. I could not move my legs. And I felt that there is a weight on my chest, like somebody sitting on my chest. That's what I felt. And that was intense. And I felt like I have died. The first thought was that मैं मर गया. And this is now just my soul that is there, that is trying to move. Like how we have seen in the movie Ghost, probably Patrick Swayze, when he dies, his ghost comes out and then he cannot touch his own body. So that was exactly how it happened. And later, it happened on many afternoons. And it would last only for a few seconds, okay? Hardly a minute. It would last only for a few seconds, and then I would just wake up and then I would be okay again. And I would not even think much about it. But one afternoon, how it happened, the same thing, something is sitting on my chest kind of feeling, and I'm trying to get up, I'm trying to push up. And I know that now this is happening with me like constantly. Now, this is something, it will subside. I know that also. But when I'm trying to push up, I have a different feeling on this particular afternoon. I feel that I have floated up. So I am floating up like a balloon, right? And I'm going up. I go to the ceiling. Get stuck there on the ceiling. And then I turn and look and I see my own body there on the bed. So I had an out of body
Out of
experience.
body experience.
I went to the ceiling and I could see myself and I could see something black on my chest, the heavy object that I was talking about. So this was my sleep paralysis. So these were the things that started happening with me when I was not able to, like throw those
And
horror in
and
my mind.
in those times, you were still writing horror. You were
I
continuing
was not
writing.
writing. I was not writing. This was the time when I was teaching. The horror stories were still in my mind and I was just teaching. So I was going on about with a mechanical life. Okay, there's a scientific explanation to this. So I'll tell that also to give the
Yes,
other perspective.
absolutely.
So the scientific explanation, medical explanation for this is that I was working very hard at that time. It was a physically draining work. And I was working so hard that my body used to be very tired. My mind was alert. So my mind would wake up and my mind would tell my body to wake up, but my body was so tired it was not responding. In a way, it is like dying. Right? So your body was not responding. There was this mind-body connection that was not happening. And that is why sleep paralysis generally occurs. So these are all the things that used to happen to me. And I started becoming like a wreck. I became irritable. I used to fight. I used to, argue with everybody at home. And then finally, we decided that these are the negative energies that are, coming within me, and I have to start taming these. I can't let them, uh, win over me. So that's where I started writing and, in a way, purging myself of all those.
Yeah. So we'll come to this thing also, but Neil, now let's. I have a very important thing I want to understand. let's get into the latest books that you've written, The Playthings and Joyride. And I think it's a series. Is another one coming out, or Joyride is the last part? Playthings and
Oh,
Joyride. That's it.
yeah, there were other books in the pipeline. So the thing is, I wanted to write horror for children. Now,
Yes.
children love horror. They are like big fans of horror. Even I was a horror lover as a child, Goosebumps and all that. So we here wanted to make a series for children, children's horror in India. And Puffin came up with this idea that let us do this. So they reached out to my agent, that is a book agent, Suhail Mathur, and they asked him whether you can speak to Neil De Silva about a book series, possible or not. So I then gave them some ideas that, okay, this is fantastic, this is nice. So far, I've never written a horror book for children. This was, I'm talking about 2021. And then I pitched some ideas to them that this could be a good. And out of that, they picked this concept of the Fearless Four. So the book actually has four investigators. They are tweens. So they go about hunting ghosts and solving paranormal mysteries which happen in their backyard. So it's a fun series. The first book was Playthings, where they investigate, a series of toys which
Yes.
have gone evil.
Yeah.
Actually, the toys turned to be possessed by a demonic force. I wanted to actually have supernatural into the stories. So therefore, it worked very well. It worked so well that in places that I've gone to talk about these books, children have mobbed me for like autographs and all. I never had that experience when I was writing adult horror books because come on now, adult readers won't come and mob you,
No.
but children have this kind of unfettered love. They come and they want autographs and all that. So that happened with me because of Playthings. Playthings worked very well. It is still, even today, I think it's on top 13 Amazon Horror or something like that. So it's working very well. And then we thought of let us continue the series of the Fearless Four. So we wrote Joyrides. Joyrides is set in an amusement park. I took the reference of SL World for this, and I made the rides spooky. So there were more stories planned in the pipeline. Of course, it's like the Famous Five. Now everybody has grown up on Famous Five, but Famous Five was a detective series. There was no horror in it. In Fearless Four, there is actual horror in it. But the children, I mean, the grammar of it is the same.
It's like Famous Five meets IT. It. I mean it.
Yes. Famous Five meets it.
Yeah.
And in fact, the cover, yeah. So this was the cover that was designed for
Yeah.
Plaything.
Yeah.
Rishabh Goswami decided it. So there is a clown in the story. So they wanted to put the clown as the face of it.
So Neil, now what I really want to also understand when it comes to writing horror for children, you tell me how did your process change from writing horror for adults versus writing horror for children? Why I'm asking, when you are writing horror for children, how mindful are you in terms of how
Gory you make it.
yes, how you can go into it and way to draw the line, yet retain the elements of scare, yet retain that element of excitement. And because see, what I've understood so far, speaking with you, is that the more you talk about the subject, the more you go into the subject. I mean, there are certain things that do happen in the mind. Children are fragile. I personally, because I have a son, I have a 5-year-old son, I was always conflicted in my mind that should I even expose him to horror even when
Right.
he's 8, 9, or 10? Because I was not exposed to horror of my own choice.
Now you're right. When you're writing for children, there are certain lines that you should not cross. Now, number one is like, there should not be too much of gore because children are not yet of a mindset where they can handle it. So everything that we write, even if we write violence, it's okay. They understand violence. But the thing is, it should not be depicted in such a way that would leave a lasting impact on their mind. So that's what I try not to do. So I will not have any gory scenes in my book. And if I have something that needs violence, the violence will be very understated. Some people do die in my novels, but they don't die in ways that they will die in a Harry Potter way. I would say that horror for children is just thrill. It's not really gone into the threshold of horror. We just would have a zombie or a werewolf or a demon for that sake, but we never cross that threshold where we will actually scar the mind of the child. That's not what we do. And that's not what even R.L. Stein did when he wrote Goosebumps. It does leave a shock at the end. You do think about it for days, but it's nothing that it will unsettle you for a long period of time. You will come out of it. And then you will go and flex to your friends. See, I read Playthings and it was nothing. So horror has to be that kind of thing. It has to lead to that kind of achievement. And that is the reason I think Playthings worked so well. Because we never crossed a line. We never put any child from the story in harm. And even if it was there, they came out of it. And then there was this message, which I think really resonated. The message was that in my story also, in Playthings also, all the children, they are, like amateurs. They don't really know what horror is. So they are like every child. But at the end of the story, they are becoming braver and they are actually fighting the demon. So that kind of thing, which also happened in Harry Potter. It
Yeah,
was
yeah,
essentially that. So this is the hero's journey.
yeah.
So my children also had this kind of a hero's journey where they started from a low point and they ended at a point where they could actually face the demon Karkota in the story. And they could do that with panache. And then there is this friendship thing, where the four children are standing up for each other. If one of the child is in danger, the other three are not deserting them and running away. So all these themes worked very well, which I don't think in adult stories they work in this way, because those are maybe adult characters also, and then the emotions are different. The play out of the drama is different.
Neil, in the Western ecosystem in Hollywood and other, popular pop culture of the Western world, you have these movies like Ghostbusters, cult
Yes.
classic, like cult
Yes.
classic. Obviously, it's around children. It's around the theme of
Little bit
ghosts and
horror, a little bit
little bit horror.
comedy.
Then you have It. Then you have multiple iterations of It. Then you have Goosebumps. So many that I'm not able to remember right now. What I really want to understand, can India also produce such global level of works, and what is required, and what is stopping authors like you, Neil? Is there some
Nothing
problem
is
that no
stopping
no
us, Raghav. We
is there
want our books to become movies.
adaptability? No, is there some resistance that you're facing from the ecosystem, is what I want to know, not from the craft but from the
We
ecosystem.
see, Indians are wonderful story writers. We are the best story writers in the world. We
क्या
have
बात कर रहे हो, seriously, you
wonderful.
really believe that कि we
I totally and absolutely believe them. I can actually tell you some names of people who have written fantastic stories. But the industry is such that you struggle to get your story told. I'm talking about purely the visual format. Because the thing is, our Indian industry, Indian film industry is very different from the Hollywood industry. We are comparing, but I know in Hollywood industries, all the films that you spoke of, even Ghostbusters and all, they did not start out big. They started out as a small movie and then they became a popular franchise because the first movie worked. Even if you talk about the adult horror that came out from the West, if you see even Freddy the 13th or the Halloween movies and all those movies, all the slasher flicks, they all started very low budget, but then they became the cult phenomenon that they are today. But in India, you tell them that I want to make this movie, which is okay, just horror. I want to just base it on horror and go with a fantastic story to any of these producers or channel offices, because I have been doing the rounds of this since 2017, so I know very well. The first thing is that they will look for is the commercial viability of it. They will want to attach a big name to the project.
like Bhool Bhulaiya, so you can also take the use case of Bhool Bhulaiya around that.
Why not? They will try to they will want you to infuse comedy into it.
Yes.
So many times it has happened that I've gone with a fantastic horror story, but they want to put comedy into it. And they will botch it up by putting horror comedy. And that is what's happening right now. So till now, we have not reached that threshold, where we can make just pure horror for horror's sake. It used to happen during, Tumbad and Stree also to that extent.
Yeah, I was about to say three, the first three.
The first three, so those things, they were good movies. They were great movies. Even the first Bhool Bhulaiya was amazing.
Akshay Kumar one, right? You're talking about the Akshay Kumar
Yes.
one.
And all the movies that Ram Gopal Verma made for horror, like, Raat and then Bhoot, the movies
Bipasha Basu.
Bipasha Basu, that Raz, that was Raz, but Raz was also
Acha,
fantastic.
acha, acha.
Raz was Vikram Bhatt.
Vikram
I'm talking about Raat, which was Revati. in it. Okay, and then
Okay,
there was
okay.
a movie called Vastu Shastra. There was a movie called Thunk. There was a movie called Naina. All these movies which were made in the early 2000s by Ram Gopal Verma. You need to watch them if you are a fan of horror, because that was our pure horror at work. We were on an upswing with horror. Then what happened is the romantic movies again took hold. And then now horror has made a comeback, but horror has made a comeback in a horror comedy space. And that is the reason why horror is still floundering. And writers like us who go with actual good stories, which are pure horror, something like maybe Poltergeist or The Shining or something like that, we face resistance because the bosses do not think that they are commercially viable. So this is a resistance. But again, I'll say things are changing. My good friend Vishal Furia, who just made Chori 2 came out now.
Yes, yes, yes. Chori 2. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
And his movie Ma is coming out next week
With
with Kajol.
Kajol.
Yes, so all these are pure horror movies. You should watch that and you'll understand what like horror is supposed to be. I'm working with Vishal on some projects, so my books will also become movies, soon. But one thing is for sure that I am not going to like make that compromise. That's how horror should be, and we do not have that kind of, you know, we have makers, we have writers, but we do not have an audience, a dedicated audience yet, because horror films do not come in a steady stream. So our audience, even if it builds up with one movie, it gets scattered. And secondly, because of this, the studios are not yet very convinced. And what has happened in India, a little bit sad, is that all these channels and all have gone corporate. All the producers, also production officers, also have gone corporate. So the passion and the dedication that was there in the industry, maybe in my father's time, like 20 years back, is not there now. We do not have a kind of a Ramsay who would dedicate their lives to make horror movies.
But Neil, isn't this corporatization of entertainment a global affair? And yet they are able to produce
They are able to
earth-shattering.
produce, but still, again, no, Hollywood is again making just remakes. What are they doing?
Acha,
There
are
is
they? Acha, are
There are
they?
few industries like few companies like Blumhouse that are producing good horror, uh, and people like that who are doing good stuff. But at least that much horror is happening in India also. But what I'm saying is it is not blowing up the way it should be.
I have done so many podcast recordings, so many, and all are virtual.
Yeah,
This is the first goddamn time when the electricity got cut twice.
yeah,
And both the times it got cut precisely when I luckily ended up a
in this
segment.
location.
It has never happened. We are doing this horror podcast, though I don't believe, as we have concluded, that it is not actually these entities, it is something which is inside you. But this brings me to a very important question. I know that you run, I know that you lift weights, I know you're a very physically fit person. And when we were speaking on phone, you did tell me कि राघव, इतना मैं कंज्यूम करता हूं, इतना ज्यादा ये हो जाता है, it is imperative that I find an outlet. Okay.
Correct.
Two questions I want to ask you on this foundation. A, in your entire journey of being a horror writer, were there certain incidents that you got scared or you were like कि, "अरे यार, मैं अब और नहीं कर सकता हूँ. I think I need to either take a break from this genre. I think my mind is playing games with me. I think this is impacting me. I think this is one vertical that I don't want to go into." And second, your connection with physical fitness with respect to what you do.
First, I'll share an anecdote with you, right? And this is fun. So I was at the Pune Lit Fest, and I think this was 2020, 19, I don't remember. So Pune International Literature Festival, huge crowd. It was on the ground, and there were lots of stages set up, and many famous authors were speaking in different stages. I was there at the horror panel. I was on stage. Jay was with me, Jay Alani, and one more person was with us. So we were three people on stage, and the it was crowded. The hall was packed, like 300 people on the in our stage itself. And we had all these lights and all going on. And then Jay started narrating a horror story, which actually happened in one of his cases. And now it is afternoon. It is around 3 in the afternoon when he started. So the story that he was narrating was about a 15-year-old girl who used to be stalked by a limbless old lady. So a legless old lady used to go behind her everywhere, to school, even to the bathroom. Like she could always see that lady in the corner. And she was terrified. And for her, this lady was so real that she could not take it out of her mind. So Jay was telling this story and he was telling it in his own way. You know, he is a podcaster also, like you. So he has got that way that he inflects his voice
Yeah,
and
yeah.
creates that kind of effect. So when
Storyteller.
you're seeing this, at that brink of that very, a point which this lady is nearing her, the lights went off in the entire hall. 300 people in the hall, and all the lights went off, and people screamed like anything. And it was like some people started, like start trying to move, and the chairs and the sounds and all. And we saw outside in every other tambu, the light is still there. People are still talking. Only in our segment it has gone. So this was
And
such
it
a
was not
hair.
planned. It was not planned कि ये
No,
इफेक्ट डालेंगे थोड़ा सा ऐसा.
not at all. It was not planned. He apne aap hua, and then it happened 3 times. Whenever he came to that point where that lady used to come to that girl, the lights went off or something other bizarre thing happened. He gave up the story and then the panel continued. So this actually happened Pune Literature Festival. We got it on record. So this was the anecdote. You asked me whether I have had such experiences. Yes, absolutely. But I would say, first let me describe. So I have a quirk. When I write horror, when I am actually outlining my stories, I do not sit here in my Mumbai house. There is too much noise outside. It is very much like, crowded. So I book myself a room, like even a small hotel room is okay for me, but in an outstation environment, and I choose a place that is reputedly haunted. So, somewhere a little bit of that vibe comes onto me. So, I have gone to Panvel, I've gone to Lonavala, which are nearby places and easily accessible. Pune, Goa, Chandigarh, Shimla, all these places I have gone and I've written. So, my way is I close myself in that room for like 7 to 10 days. I come out only for my lunch and dinner, and otherwise, I'm just writing, researching or writing. And I do that for 7 or 10 days at a stretch. So once when I was in Chandigarh, so invariably what happens is when I'm writing, I write in the night times mostly. So the lights flicker, पर्दे flutter करने लगते हैं. So all those things happen. And I take it for granted कि ये सब होना ही है. But one time in Chandigarh, this incident was the most bizarre. So I was writing, it was my laptop, the table was like this, and I was typing. It was like 2 in the morning, and it was this Vashikaran scene that I was writing. So there
Hmm.
were actually these mantras and all that I had researched, and I was typing them out. This was for my book Pishach. So when I was writing, at that time I suddenly felt like kuch hai piche, like my peripheral vision told me something is there. So I turned, kuch nahi tha. Second time I turned, kuch nahi tha. Third time I turned, and it was just a flash, but I could see a tall figure like standing from floor to the ceiling. Like, as a wardrobe was there, that in the Oyo rooms you have that wardrobe, and this tall shadowy figure was standing, and he was so tall that his elbow was on the top of that wardrobe. He was standing like this, taking the support of that. And I could very clearly see that figure, very dark. You can imagine the whole room, its walls were white, completely white. और उसके बीच में this one figure was there standing, and he was looking at me like what I was writing from there. And I saw that, and it is so deeply ingrained in my mind, that image, that for a moment I was stunned. And then I just shut my laptop and I went to sleep. I did not write that day. I actually opened the door. I saw outside, everybody was there and all. Means I saw the outside environment a little bit because I wanted to, like take that out of me, that image. Then I came back to the room sometime back. Then I put everything off and I slept. Now, I came back to Mumbai after that. I finished the novel. I wrote it only in the daytimes. Then I did not write it in the night. After coming back, I spoke to my paranormal investigator friends and I asked them, Ki, this happened with me. Do you believe it? And they told me a thing that really scared me even further. What they told me was, see, आप है ना दिन रात horror लिख रहे हो. And when you're writing horror, even if you don't believe it or if you don't like accept it, you are slowly turning psychic. Because what you're doing is you are invoking their world. You're trying to trick it. It's like a realm, there's a curtain, and you're trying to look behind that curtain. Every time you are writing about ghosts, and that day you are writing actually Vashikaran ke mantra. So when you write all that, you are actually inciting them, and they want to just come and look whether you're doing the right thing or not. And sometimes when that curtain you open to see that side, from that side also something enters this side. So, this is what is happening, and you may not be psychic, but this is a psychic experience where you have experienced it. And then I started analyzing in my mind that whenever I write horror, something like this is happening in a lesser version, or this or the highest of it. So, in a lesser version, something or the other always happens, like lights went off. I went to record my TED talk in IIT Guwahati, and I was put up in the guest house. So the guest house was also room number 113. I made a reel out of it. I always end up getting a 13 number. I think the people give me a 13 number because I'm a horror author. So they gave me this room number 113, and it was a beautiful guest house. Guwahati, after all, is a beautiful city. I finished my TED talk and I took my flight back to Mumbai. Before the flight took off, I get this message from the Guwahati team. And they say कि sir देखो आप चले गए और क्या होने लगा, and they sent me a video. I downloaded the video, and the video was my room, the room where I was staying. The lights of it were flickering, and they were flickering in such a bizarre way. Ban chalu like that, it was not
Like
just
a pattern.
in a pattern. It was not just an electricity problem. It was something like somebody was signaling something, like you saw in Stranger Things.
Yeah.
So kind of a
Morse
rhythmic.
code or whatever.
And they said, ki, I don't know what the students told me that we don't know what you set up here, but something is there, and we change the bulb, still it's happening. So this is what happened.
How does your where does logic come in then? Because you are in the world, there is no option for you. How do you deal with it? And does keeping a individual's body fit and mind strong a very powerful way of not
That
letting
is
them
the
control
reason.
you? तो अब आप मुझे बताओ. Yes.
That is the
Yes.
reason
Yes.
I took that change. So this was during COVID, the pandemic.
Hmm.
During the pandemic, all these incidents started happening a little bit more because I was at home only, and I also started becoming unhealthy
Hmm.
because everybody was at home, everybody was getting unhealthy at that
Yes.
time. So I started thinking, like, I have taken up that I want to write horror, but writing horror is not like going the right way. At least I'm getting scared of certain things, and certain things am I invoking devils? Am I doing that? Am I bringing the negative forces in my life? And I have two children at home, so I should not do something like this. So at that time, something else also happened. So I started getting some pains in the chest, right? So exactly this area of the chest, I started getting some kind of pain, and the pains wouldn't go. They lasted for some time. Then I had to go to a cardio. I mean, I could have gone to a physician, but I decided I'll go to a cardio. I don't want to take any chances. I went to the cardio, and the cardio analyzed me, and he said, your heart is perfectly fit. आप heart के लिए आए हो, don't worry about it. Your heart is perfectly fit. But the thing is, no, you are getting some kind of cramps, which I don't know why you are getting it. Maybe because you are overweight. I was very overweight at that time. I had gone up to 86 kgs. So maybe because of that, and you're sitting in a chair all the time, so something is happening. And he gave me like hundreds of tests. ये सब test करके आ जाना. So that shook me. I did not want to, like go in that direction where I have these in and out visits in the health clinics. So that is, the pandemic was still going on. But that day I decided that I have to take stock of the situation. Both my body and my mind I have to clean up, because I am trying to somehow, bringing some toxins into it. In the mind, it is the negative energies, and in the body, it is all the junk that I was eating and all this, sitting sedentary life that I was leading. So that was when I started working out. I started with simple home workout videos. I used to just follow along and do it. And when the pandemic opened up, the lockdown opened up, I started going to the park, little bit jogging. I had never run before, but then I started jogging. This was like 2021. My first run is still on Strava. I was so large at that time. And then I started running. And while running, I understood one thing. There's 2 hours in the morning when I run. Now I've become a daily runner. I don't miss even a single day. And I run every day, even if it is just a 5 kilometers. Usually it is longer than that. So those 2 hours when I'm running, I am completely divesting myself from the horror world that I build up the rest of the day. I don't think about Bhoot Pret. I don't think about any of the mantras that I have researched on, or I don't even think about my characters. I only think about what is the next step I'm going to run, where I'm going to run. So that is the only thing that I'm thinking of. And this helps me like a meditative way. So we all need to meditate, right? We all do that. Today is International Yoga Day, also, by the way. So we all meditate, we all bring spiritual energies within us. For me, that meditation is running. And a lot of people, runners in my group, we are all like 40 plus, right? So we all believe that this is the way that we are bringing positive energies in our life.
Yes.
Even they are professionals. Many of them are like CEOs also, like that level
Yeah.
of people.
Yeah.
And so they also have a lot of strain and stress in their lives. And they don't want to live with that the whole day. So they have become extremely fit. A group of my friends have now gone to Manali for a trek. So, that kind of positivity we try to bring in our life. And for me, it's doubly important. I'll tell you that after this, after I brought fitness back into my life, my horror stories have become even better. So now what happens is I still see the ghosts and all, like occasionally, not always. I still go to isolated places to write, but now it is like more about understanding what it is about and more about accepting and writing. Now it does not create that kind of despair and gloom in me, which it used to do earlier.
So it's
So,
basically all about if these entities are trying to look at you like an instrument for their use, but if they see that the instrument in itself is very profound and powerful
right,
and in control of her or his own mind and body, then I think logically it becomes very difficult for them to.
absolutely. So
Uh,
I've heard, these people who are yogis, right? The ones who do it for sustained intervals of time, yogis, I'm talking about. They are trying to also harness the positive forces of life
yeah,
within themselves.
yeah,
But how can they distinguish if suppose a negative entity tries to enter? Because this is all a very parallel realm. So they do it because their mind is shielded from the negative energies. And this happens because they have conditioned themselves to do it that way. For me, running is that conditioning. And it's not just running. I run, I gym, I do a lot of things.
yeah,
I even have made my diet very clean.
yeah,
So I don't eat anything that's processed or that comes from a packet. I
yeah,
don't even have heavy spices now. So now I've made my diet very clean. I would not say exactly sattvic because I would never be
yeah,
able to do.
yeah, yeah,
I have made my diet clean and I feel clean not only in my body but also in my mind
yeah.
now. I write horror, but I'm a very positive minded person.
Makes sense. That's very beautiful. Neil, one last thing I want to ask you. From this entire discussions that we have done, and the kind of discussions that do happen around the subject and the topic, if there is one takeaway that you would want people to understand from this episode regarding this ecosystem, anything that you really truthfully believe in and you want people to also understand and not get deluded around the subject, what would that be? Any take, one strong positive takeaway that you want to spread out in the world regarding this ecosystem, this realm, or this world that you feel can, whatever this, hear
So
that.
the first and foremost thing that I would like to really very emphatically say is that do not fear the unknown. It is there. But the thing is, the more we fear about it, the more we stay away from it, the that much it will try to become, havi on you. That is a Hindi
Yeah,
word,
yeah,
but it is the perfect word for it. It will overwhelm you. It will take up your life. So instead of that, if you understand what is beyond, if you try to research, if you try to learn about spiritualism more, if you try to learn about the positive forces, negative forces, everything, and you gain the right knowledge of it, then you can keep these away. It is just like a doctor should know what is that microbe causing the disease before the doctor wants to cure it. So it's the same thing. You have to understand what is affecting you the most. If it is something that is paranormal, then try to understand why that is causing that kind of fear in you, rather than just locking the doors or chanting some mantras of whose the meaning also you do not realize. So understand what is the potent power within it. Secondly, I would say horror is something that is actually a very beautiful genre. I see beauty in fear and in our reaction towards fear, because don't you agree with me when I say that fear saves our lives?
Yes.
Because we are afraid of certain things, we do not become reckless. It is also during driving, you do not go over a particular speed because you are scared that you may kill yourself doing so. So this is fear. Make fear a weapon rather than being something that you're just going to be scared of all your life. And also what happens is, the more we are afraid of the unknown, that much the unscrupulous people will take advantage of us. Blind faith will increase, superstition will increase. Superstition increases only because people do not want to analyze what is the root cause of something.
Beautiful. Beautiful. What a
So
line, yaar.
that's the reason why why there were so many superstitions prevalent in India, and not just that, so many unholy holy men taking advantage of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What a beautiful thing to say.
So that is the thing that we need to like really take stock of, understand it. We should not let people just get away with
Yeah.
things because of our blind faith.
Yeah.
So that's it. Understand or accept it.
Neil, thank you so much. This has been. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I really want you to keep it very real as well, very scientific and very grounded, not to delude people, and just what it is exactly what we feel about that. And I hope आपको अच्छा लगा ये conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't know कैसे like इतना time चला गया, but I mean that was
मजा
the
आया
fun.
मेरे को तो absolutely. See, this is the thing ना. This is the thing. So many things. I mean, this could have मेरे पास तो बहुत questions थे. बहुत क्वेश्चन थे, बट मुझे लगा था कि वो बहुत ज्यादा लंबा हो जाएगा, एंड मे बी वी कैन सेव इट फॉर द नेक्स्ट बुक दैट यू कम आउट विद. नील, थैंक यू अगेन सो मच फॉर योर टाइम. रियली अप्रिशिएट इट एंड ऑल द वेरी बेस्ट.